So, first three chapters. What do you think? Are you hooked yet? I know, introductions are sometimes slow. Hang on, this is a great, great book. You're going to love it. Anyway, things I kind of wanted to point out and think about. And I really thought about different ways on how to do this. I didn't know if doing like an ed puzzle where I would pause the reading in the video to talk to you like I would in class would work. I think this might be better so that you can kind of keep the flow of the reading going and then because the chapters are so short. Anyway, we'll try this for a while and see. So, things to think about in chapter one. Um, First off, when Jeffrey's parents died, he was three. Three. That's so sad. And then he went and lived with his uncle and aunt, and aren't they awful, for 8 years. 3 plus 8 is he was about 11 years old when he ran away, so really close to your age when he ran away. I can't imagine living in this house where the people don't talk to each other and where nothing is shared. You have two refrigerators, two toasters, two everything. If they were able to have two Jeffreys, they would have. And they talked about the Night of the Spring musical. And think about those like elementary school like shows you did with your music classes. You'd go over to the high school and you'd like do a bunch of Christmas songs and dances and things. Maybe you did one in the spring. And so it was that one of those kinds of things where Jeffrey just kind of lost it and took off running and is never going to be heard from again, according to his aunt and uncle. Now, this book is set back before civil rights happened. So we're looking like back in the 50s. And so you didn't have Amber Alerts and you didn't have, the internet to say, hey, there's all these missing kids. They didn't even have like the Center for Missing and Exploited Children. It was kids disappeared. You'd file a missing person report and the police would investigate. But a lot of times, if it was a runaway, there wasn't a whole lot that they could do if they couldn't find the kid, which I know was weird, right? So in chapter two, he talks about he ran for about a year um, and he kept moving from town to town, place to place. And it wasn't like he was running nonstop for that year. He would like run to this town, maybe hang out for a couple of days, go to the next town, stay for a couple of days. And he was really just kind of wandering and on his own for this year. And then he ended up staying in a town called Two Mills, right across the river from Bridgeport, where he was living with his parents before they died. And he talks about some say he only intended to pause here, but he stayed because he was so happy to make a friend. Friendship is what we all want. It's so important. And so yeah, no wonder he stayed. And he met this, people say all the time, oh, I know so and so who was in New York City in the Twin Towers at 9/11. Everyone knows someone from 9/11. Probably not. A lot of people might have like a 6 degrees of separation to someone from that situation, um, but not as many people that say they do actually do. Well, that's what he's talking about at the end of chapter two, where everybody saw him on that first day. Probably not. But the people who did see him that first day said the thing that stuck out to them was that he said, hi. Why would that be something that stands out? The fact that this kid said hi. That tells you something about this community where he has landed. Then in chapter three, we meet Amanda. Oh my gosh, Amanda is one of my all time favorite literary characters. She is just spunky and sassy, and I love her to pieces. But anyway, she carries around this suitcase. Um, by the way, we'll get to the suitcase in a second. You know me, I have 10 different thoughts going on at the same time. So she's saying she was suspicious because who was this white stranger kid and what was he doing in the East End where almost all the kids were black? And why was he saying things to her? We don't typically focus on the race of characters in a novel, but in this case, it's before the civil rights have happened. Segregation is still a thing. And we spent all that time with the Little Rock Nine earlier this year. So you understand that segregation was a big thing and it was very real. And the fact that he's a white kid in the black half of town really kind of stands out to Amanda. So anyway, she has this suitcase, which makes him think that she's a runaway too, but it's actually full of books. And some of you may have experienced this where a little brother or sister or a friend keeps bugging you and bugging you and bugging you that they want this, they want this, they want this, and they finally give in and give it to him. She ends up giving him a book called The Children's Crusade. And we've talked before about how authors choose things for a specific reason. In this case, Jerry Spinelli chose this particular book of the Children's Crusade to be the one that she gives to Jeffrey. Now, the Children's Crusade, you can look it up on Google later on, but this happened back in history. People in Western Europe, think like England and France and things like that, they were trying to spread Christianity to the rest of the world. They felt like if you weren't a Christian, you were living your life wrong. And we're not going to argue religious belief right now, but this is what was thought at the time. Anyway, so they sent all of these knights in shining armor off to the Middle East to save these people and convert them to Christianity. Well, as you know, the people of the Middle East aren't Christian and they feel very strongly about their own personal religion. Religion is a very deeply personal thing. And if someone comes in and says, hey, the way you believe is wrong, you must believe this way, people get offended by that. So it didn't go well. There were all these wars fought over this crusade to try to spread Christianity into the Middle East. Well, someone had the bright idea, she says ironically, um, that if we send children to spread Christianity, it'll go better because no one's going to fight with children. Right. It was an absolutely epic fail. But the idea behind it was that children can accomplish what adults sometimes cannot. And that idea for Maniac Magee kind of carries out throughout the whole book. It's pretty cool. Anyway, so I know we're just still in the introduction phase of things. Things haven't really kicked off. We've met Jeffrey, we've got his background, we've met Amanda, we've got more characters to meet, and we're going to keep doing this a couple of chapters a day, and I'll pop in afterwards to kind of talk about things. Feel free to put comments in the class comment section if you guys would like to have a discussion about what we've read today, or if you have thoughts about what we read today. I'd love to hear from you. Um, anyway, we'll keep this going for a while. Have a great afternoon. Be kind to one another. I'll see you next time.